After 5 weeks with the building team on site and then a few days away, it feels a little bit unusual to be back here again working on my own. And although I have a few things that I've got to do off-site this week, I'm really looking forward to getting back into the work, especially on a wall that I can clean up now that the stairs have been taken out. And although it's just been me doing the work, on the first day back, I did have some company. First up, I needed to open up the house and get some air back into it after a week away. And with Billy on site, I then added some extra cover and blocks to the well top. Then I got set up for some power tool action on the salon back wall. Starting with the corner with the sidewall, where the lower section is actually a seam of bedrock with the stones built on top of it. Billy was keeping a watchful eye from a suitable distance. And next, I then moved on to the back wall, of which the main part had been beneath the stairs and was covered by what I think was a cement render that I assume was added to block out dampness from the higher ground level on the other side. And I wasn't really sure how easy it was going to be to take off or how long all of this work was going to take. But I was pleasantly surprised by how much was coming off with the power chisel. Although I was still going to have to remove a lot of material in the joints between the stones and on their surface. To avoid too much rubble piling up, I did a first tidy up. I then started work on the next section of the wall, which was where there had been a line of tiles along the top of the steps of the stairs, and which had been fixed to the wall with a very thick layer of cement that was proving much more difficult to shift. After clearing the top layer of this section, it was time for some lunch. First of all for Billy, and then for me. We then headed out for a walk on a track in the woods before returning for some more work. In the afternoon, I worked on a different wall which I hadn't cleared previously, originally for safety reasons and then because of future work plans for this corner. But I now wanted to check the look of the stones in the wall beneath the plaster to assess the potential work I'll have to do. At this stage, Billy was rewarded for his patience with his favourite snack, a chicken stick. And once I had seen enough of the wall, I packed up so that I could get to some appointments off-site, including a haircut for me. The next day, I would be back working on the salon back wall, and I was anticipating a lot more dust, so I needed a change of clothes and a solution for stopping the dust spreading across the whole house now that the old stairwell is completely opened up and there are no doors between the rooms. So I put some sheets in place to try and contain the dust that would come off the wall. When I started to clear the mortar and cement with a metal brush on a grinder. It was quickly clear that my initial design wasn't going to work well because of the space in the curve of the vaulted ceiling, so I changed the design into something more like an indoor dust tent. And this did a much better job at containing the dust. But after a long morning inside it, I was keen to get outside for some lunch and some fresher air. To let the dust fully settle in the tent, I started the afternoon clearing the rubble from the work the previous day on the other wall. And then I was in and out of the tent, first with the grinder, and then the water sprayer, which was partly for cleaning the stones and partly to settle the dust. I then had to finish up for the day to get my car to the garage for its final preparation for its annual inspection, or ITV, the next day. After my car had been deemed roadworthy at the official ITV centre, I was back at the house in the afternoon and back into the dust tent. Using the grinder with the metal brush to clean the surfaces of the stones. Even though it was cloudy and a slightly cooler day, it was really hot work in the tent, especially with the various layers of protection I was wearing. But after a drinks break outside, I was back to work. First, using one of the chisel hammers to clear joints between the stones. And then alternating between using the grinder with the sheets down and using the chisel with the sheets up. There was then a final spray of the surface before changing and heading home in the evening. Forecast for the next day was for mixed weather and potential storms, but it started relatively brightly. And I had good light indoors to be able to work on cleaning out the mortar joints, which was easier to do by hand with a brush and a metal edge, although it took a lot longer than these clips of my work up to my morning coffee break. Then I was back in and using the grinder again. Before adding some water with a touch of cleaning acid, and then moving back to clearing the cement line in the middle, first by hand, and then with a power tool. I was back outside briefly for some lunch. Before a longer session of clearing mortar and putting a lot more dust in the air. When I was outside for a drink and de-dust, it was a good deal brighter, and I thought I'd take a rest from the dust tent and do some work on removing the structures around the old well that I had started a few weeks ago. When I had cleared up to what looked like the main well wall on one side, I then moved back inside. Cleaning a lot of the old mortar joints and dust with some more water with a bit of acid. before finishing up for the day. On the last day of the week, I started with some tidying up of the dust piles on the concrete bases and floor. Then I did some final chiselling and metal brushing, at least for this week. Then it was time for the dust tent to come down. The removal of some dust and rubble. And then the setup for the final job of the week, which with the sun, warmer air and breeze was going to be a power wash of the wall to remove more dust and loose material. After an initial once-over, I left the wall to dry and headed outside for my lunch. Before returning to washing the wall in phases from the top down, leaving each level to dry while I got on with doing something else. And then finishing my work for the week when I washed the last and lowest part of the wall. As I said earlier, before I started the work on this wall, I wasn't sure how long it was going to take. And while there is still some cement and some mortar on certain parts that I'm going to need to clear off before I do any repointing, overall, I'm pretty pleased with the results. Especially of this section, which before had been completely covered with the cement. And I really like being able to see stones from the bottom right to the top up there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it looks in the future with a bit more tidying up and when the new stairs are in place. Next week, Laura is going to be away, so Billy is going to be with me, and while I'm sure he'll be happy supervising my work, he'll also need some walks, and perhaps not just around the house. So please do tune in next week to see what we get up to.